Welcome to the Unhinged.
Unhinged.
The Unhinged Poddy.
Welcome to the Unhinged Poddy. This is your host Rasi, and this week we are spilling the tea on sustainability, dissecting its gendered burdens, corporate greenwashing, and digging into why the ultra-rich need to take responsibility for trashing the planet. And with me today is John, my neighbor and sustainability consultant, author, and accidental influencer, to share his insights and knowledge. Hi, John.
Howdy again, neighbor.
If you haven't already, go listen to the part 1 of this discussion. We last started the topic on the broad world of sustainability and touched on its surprising gendered dynamics. Picking up on the power of consumer action, let's now explore if the sustainability movement's focus on women is a strategic glass cliff for corporate accountability. The case in most households that women are responsible for the daily living type of decisions. They're responsible to do the shopping, they're responsible to clean the household, to actually maintain and run a household. So they primarily end up being responsible to pick and choose what they consume. Plus, the way their own upkeep is so tedious and so full of consuming even more things, the burden ends up being like this. Which reminds me, if we wanted to make it so painfully, obviously, horribly gendered, how many times have you seen men choosing to pick an eco-conscious car, for example? Because if we wanted to be so cliche, we could say men love their cars and they're more interested in buying a good car or a good lawnmower or good tools. Let's put it this way, tools. Anything that is considered manly. How many times have you seen them be so, for real, consciously standing and thinking about, oh, what am I going to buy? Is it going to be toxic to the environment or not? Do you see that often? Is that happening?
It's very rare, and I'm going through my sort of mental Rolodex right now of incidents where I've seen any advertisement of a traditionally hyper-masculine product being done sustainably. I know if I were to really sit and think about it, I would find it, but the fact that I have to sit and think about it and doesn't immediately come to mind is an issue. Anytime we see any messaging around sustainability, it always tends to be soft, again, geared towards the feminine. Whether or not they're specifically going towards the female segment is a different question. I'm sure they are, but it is always more of a feminine approach to the positioning, and it's all very much soft versus, you know, the strength and the metal and the hard of a masculine product like a tool or a big truck. So no, it's always geared towards sort of the feminine.
And that then drives the thought process before buying as a consumer if you're male. That is so interesting.
Which then is a vicious cycle, right? Because all a company has to do is just seed that, right? This is a soft thing. This is a feminine thing. And there's already going to be socioeconomic and social constructs around that is going to do a disservice to anybody that would counter that. You talked about before, men wanting to, you know, be male feminists. And the backlash they get from that. So it's the same thing in advertising. Oh, why would you support that soft product when you could be doing right?
True.
And you know, these companies are not dumb. They spend millions of dollars in terms of market research and putting the advertising there, so they know what they're doing. If we're having this conversation and we know that, they absolutely know.
They're miles ahead, yeah.
That was depressing.
That was very depressing, but a live example of how much ever you want gender to not be a part of conversation. It exists. You choosing to ignore the facts doesn't make them cease to exist.
No, and it does a disservice to the people you're trying to serve. If you can't operate in a realm of utopia when we don't exist in one. As depressing as that reality might be, you need to present the same thing when we talked about corporations a minute ago. The truth with the positives with the negatives. It's that ultimate transparency, whether it's a corporation talking about their greenwashing efforts or an individual trying to make a difference.
Yeah. So then in saying that, do you think the sustainability culture, does it punish women for not doing enough, but at the same time it lets others opt out entirely? The key word being opt out. Others can choose to not participate in it. And then women are stuck with that mental load. And what do you think is the cost of that moral pressure? Because even if we did not want to admit this, the empathy part of our brains is very different. We're more in tune to it because of other things affecting our thought processes. I tend to feel it deeply because I'm scared for me, other women, children, future. Like, society cultivates that more. Then if I see myself failing, I tend to make it bigger in my head than it is. What do you think is the cost of that then?
Yeah, so with sustainability, and I talk about this a lot, we've done a really bad job at our marketing. Horrible with our marketing. And you think about the traditional positioning of sustainability or saving the planet, we'll use that term. It's the burnt out hellscape of an Earth. It's the nuclear winter. It's the Mad Max on the motorbikes and all that sort of stuff. It's the sad polar bear on the melting ice cap. So we don't operate in the realm of guilt. We operate in the realm of fear. We try to scare the hell out of everybody. We don't give them solutions. We just tell them we're all going to hell in a handbasket. We don't tell them what to do to make the world better. And I don't know what idiotic minds thought this up in terms of the marketing, but rather than encouraging people to make change, what we've done is we've made everybody apathetic. So if you're one of 10 billion people on the planet looking at these advertisements and seeing these messages, you sit back and you don't feel guilty. You might feel scared, but you definitely feel apathetic about the whole thing, and you go, oh, that's just how it is.
That is so beautifully articulated. I did not...
It's not a guilt thing. There should be empathy built in. There should be, especially if we're constantly, and we've been doing this since the 80s, trying to scare the hell out of everybody about this end of the world thing. Wouldn't you want to be a bit more empathetic, and wouldn't you want to care more to try to fix this? But it's on us as sustainability people to not have given the solutions. So I think at this stage of the game, what we don't lack is awareness. People know. If you don't know something is going on, then you have your head in the sand and I don't know what to do with you. I can't hammer the point home anymore. What we don't have are we do have them. What we aren't giving to people are the solutions they need to make a difference. So again, it's not a guilt thing. I think it's much more of an apathy thing. And when you're apathetic, you just go along with whatever is already happening. You buy the products you've already bought. You don't consider that there's an impact to things because you're just sort of protecting yourself. And if we layer on top of that everything else going on in the world over the past 10 years, of course people are going to become hyper protective about their own little piece of the planet and not really worry about anything outside of that. It's sort of protecting our own, because at this stage of the game, what else do we have?
It's also the mindset of not wanting to be inconvenienced.
Why would I want to be?
When your baseline has been so comfortable.
Oh, sorry. So that was another part of your question is implying, you didn't say this, but I will, that there is an absolute socioeconomic element, as we've alluded to already, to sustainability. Being sustainable in a lot of ways is a privilege, and it's a privilege afforded to wealthier white people in the developed world. And when I talked originally at the very beginning of my unique perspective on sustainability, it's this. It's if I was to go to a sustainability conference in the United States or anywhere in the developed world, Australia, EU, whatever it is, sustainability is an academic conversation. It is a conversation where we talk about the science behind things. We talk about things with a very much, it's at arm's length. The majority of my career, the vast majority of my life has been spent in the developing world, where sustainability is a very different conversation.
Right?
It is not academic. It's life and death. This is happening now. It's roll your sleeves up and get dirty because we need to make the change and do the work. So it absolutely changes the dynamic of the conversation. And it demonstrates, at least in my mind, that there's absolutely an element of where you are economically in terms of how you approach this. We see it at the UN level as well. One of the reasons that these annual UN conferences get nowhere is because for decades the developing countries said, hey, you guys made this mess. We need a little money to try to fix things up that you caused. And the developed countries go, not our problem. That was hundreds of years ago. And so the fight over funding makes it even more complex. So it's these nuances that complicate this, going back to this idea of flipping a switch and making it as easy as just making the world better today. That's not the reality. There are so many nuances to this.
Just wishful.
It's wishful thinking, but it's...
You want somebody else to go and fix it. you don't want to acknowledge your stake in it or your role in
It's
it or your
everybody else's
responsibility.
problem.
Yeah, in it. If nobody wants to shoulder the responsibility or share that burden, it's never going to get fixed.
Ever.
To acknowledge your privilege, to acknowledge your power is a part of it. But yeah, nobody wants to shoulder that burden at all.
That's that apathy, right? It's the apathetic approach to sustainability. It's somebody else's problem. Or even worse, it's not a problem, which is something we're seing now. It's the illusion of
denial.
Denial. The frog in the boiling pot is the illusion we use, right? Where, for anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's, if you put, I don't know if somebody's actually done this. I
Please
hope they
don't.
haven't.
This is not a how-to.
This is not a how-to at all. But the idea is that if you're in a slowly boiling pot of water, you will not recognize the water getting warmer until it's way too late. Guess where we are now? That's where we are. We don't see these things around us because they've been happening incrementally. How many times have you heard this is the hottest summer on record? Or this is a once-in-a-century event.
So true.
But a once-in-a-century event should happen once every century, not once a week. So
Or
we're
every
already there.
summer. Yeah.
Again, apathy. Apathy combined with misinformation, combined with ignorance, combined with selfishness leads us to where we are right now.
It's a healthy dose of everything that is.
But it doesn't have to be that way. I suppose is if I wanted to flip it on its head and make a positive statement out of it, it's not how it has to be. And it's not as if I'm being like Pollyanna trying to talk about, this altruistic future that's unrealistic. It's very realistic.
It is doable. It heavily relies on a huge chunk of masses agreeing to it. That will always be the case. And I think that's the part that people don't want to admit to or acknowledge or be a part of. You cannot shirk your own responsibility. You cannot run away from your part, even if it's tiny. Even having conversations makes such a huge impact. You not wanting to be burdened with the thought process that's not doing anybody any favors. Having conversations is literally the bare minimum you can do. It's costing you nothing, which also makes me realize how strong your point is about this being an academic conversation. When you talk about it with these over-intellectual perspectives and with such floral language or elitist lens you want to put it on, you are removed from that conversation. You are not directly impacted by it. You can actually opt out.
You probably never were.
You probably never were.
So you have no idea the struggles people go through. And the reality of, if I think about my time living in Shanghai, where you would step outside and you would breathe in polluted air, or you would have to worry about the water you drank or the food you would eat because it would be full of. There was a spate of time, and I'll give this example because it's the one that always sticks in my head in Shanghai, where unscrupulous food vendors would do whatever they could to save $1, and there were vendors on the street that would sell those little delicious skewers of meat that were supposed to be lamb.
Yeah.
They were lamb-flavored rat.
Are you shitting me?
Yeah. So things like that. So these are the things that somebody that's sitting in a high-rise in Los Angeles probably doesn't even imagine could ever happen, but the look on your face is one of shock, but also, yeah, I could see that.
I mean, to have confirmation is really scary. to know firsthand of somebody being like, yep, I have proof. No.
So it's a very different perspective, right? Of what is possible and what needs to happen. But if it's the same with anything, not just sustainability, but any sort of profession or outlook on something. If you don't know the holistic, you don't have a holistic understanding of everything going on, how can you meaningfully contribute to changing things in a positive direction? You need to have a full scope understanding. You can't be a surgeon, and you might be a dental surgeon, but you need to know the whole body. It's the same thing with anything that one wants to do.
This was such a funny perspective, and it's horrifying, but only because I'm not directly impacted by it, so I can laugh about it. When I was a part of the UN Women, the conversation was coming up over and over, and it keeps being brought up every time but being dismissed, about how women who live in low-lying areas which are flood prone and such, people who get affected by first-hand impacts of these horrible climate change events happening, would always be women and children first.
No, and it's true. So it is always women and children. It could be the mothers or the grandparents, depending on the geography. So if I think about the social makeup of China, the parents typically go far away to go work in factories, and they leave the children with the grandparents behind. But those children and grandparents obviously are dealing with the negative impact socially, but also environmentally. The image that always comes to mind are that's a hard word to say. Flood-prone areas. You don't need to edit that. That's fine. I can slip up. Flood-prone areas in Dhaka, in Bangladesh, where most people do live below below sea level. So they're constantly getting flooded. They do live in large slums. And the wet bulb temperatures there, especially in the summertime, are things that humans are not supposed to have to endure, that we're not physically made to endure. Are men dealing with that? Yes, of course, men are dealing with that. But by and large, the onus of responsibility sits on the mothers, the grandmothers, and the children who are sort of left behind to deal with the house that's flooding while men are off doing work. Everyone plays a part in the situation, of course. Nobody is saying that men do not have a responsibility, but the vast majority of the onus is on females.
Even emotional onus, because they worry about themselves, the parents, the older people who they're caretaking for, the children always, as we have seen time and time again.
Yes.
The social behavior is going to have very real consequences. This is kind of slightly off topic, but did you come across a few instances where there was a severe weather warning? Guess where it was? US, of course, it's always US. And the wife kept saying, hey, let's evacuate. And the husband was like, nah, it's okay. What?
All the time. You see it on the news all the time. It's so normalized. Instead of we could talk about media complicity in the environmental crisis till forever. But the media looks at that and goes, oh, that's how it is. It's a man.
That's how they are.
That's how they are, men. Without diving any deeper into the repercussions of that sort of attitude.
The baseline that different genders are operating from. One, being able to easily get away without worrying, without having any consideration for others. How horrible the impact is on the vulnerable population. How they simply do not have the luxury to just get up and leave and be selfish. Like, if the father's already gone, and if the mother then starts to center herself too, who the hell is going to look after the children? That brings me to what you just touched on as well. Like, how often the sustainability is marketed is very soft, like you said. Is there a reason why the eco-consumerism is so feminine or soft? Why? Why do they keep doing this? Why do they not want men to participate in it? Because surely they know what they're doing. You said so. Marketers know who to target and why to target. Why are they so anti going towards male perspectives, other than the will to cop out because you don't want to face the backlash? Other than that, is there any real reason? Is it money? Because isn't that the bottom line always? If it's going to cost you a lot, then you're going to be driving your efforts towards or away from it or whatever. So other than reputation or backlash, is there any financial impact?
It's and of course, as we said before, there's always outliers to this. It's just none are coming to mind at the moment. But I think for a lot of particularly marketing executives at companies, people putting together these campaigns and the positioning, they still very much view sustainability from it being an empathetic sort of practice. Again, a soft practice. We keep using that word. And so because of that, the natural gravitation in the business world is to bring that to the feminine. So that's just because of entrenched gender norms in business and them not thinking laterally. But there are plenty of businesses that are trying to approach that a little bit differently. It's just that they have to really go against the grain in a lot of ways to do it, and that then impacts the bottom line. So where we tend to see companies bucking trends is if a company is purpose-built around some sort of an ethical or sustainable model, so we call those social enterprises, but very rarely from these sort of big blue-chip, multinational, 200-year-old companies, because they just do things the way they've always done things. So it's happening, it's changing. There are groups, even here in Australia, trying to get advertising companies to think differently about how they approach that and position messaging. It's just a very slow process because, again, entrenched in all of this are, let's be honest, pale male stale people sitting in boardrooms that are really not willing to do anything differently until it finally hits the bottom line. So when consumers finally say, hey, we're not going to shop from you anymore because of this, this, and this, and they're very specific about it, then things might change. We haven't really gotten there yet with consumers demanding broad scale in large groups, like you mentioned before, change because of sustainability related issues.
Which is a reminder that boycotting and strong backlash works. Well, it's clear that the eco burden isn't where it should be. In our next episode, we'll ask if women are being set up for failure and how boycotting can actually force change. And that was the Unhinged Poddy episode for today. I hope you enjoyed. Reach out to us at the Unhinged Poddy on our socials. Give me your feedback, suggestions. Tell me what you would like me to talk about next. Until then, bye.
The Unhinged Poddy.